going to do today with you is I will introduce the whole picture of what silence means in education. And when I say education, it includes this so and anything across the discipline as relating to teaching and learning. So I will provide a holistic picture of what silence means, but mostly based on my own research. When you look at the discourse on silence beyond my research, you will see a lot of the same thing being repeated. So some of the things that I present today, I research findings will be very similar. So what you need to do is after this, you might like to read a bit more around to see nuances and perspective, but the whole picture will be with you today. So there are two sections. The first section is my presentation of the discourse, and then the second section will be some ideas about research that you can do. And I try to think of an approach which makes research easy. Sometimes researchers out there have had so much experience, they have so much knowledge about research approaches, and they have gone into the field too much. They have great skills. So we cannot compete with them. If we write like them, it will take a long time. We need to grow older to write like them. So what I thought today to share with you is I will recommend a method that they rarely do, but is powerful and easy. Yeah. So you can do it too. I will show you steps and components, and I will give you at least one sample articles to kind of follow or get inspired by, and then maybe as part of your course at UAD, that you can write essays relating to this topic, and then Dr. Bambang will examine your work and perhaps make comments, and you will improve, and someday you will be able to submit to the journal and will publish for the world to read your work. This is an interesting area, and we brought it up not because we do it and we want you to copy us, but I think the main thing is this is an area that is new in the world in education. When you read about education, especially teaching and learning, and in particular, TESOL, teaching and learning, TESOL pedagogy, scholars have talked so much about talk. Yeah, talk is important. To learn a language, you have to open your mouth and speak. But rarely do people talk about silence. Over the past 2 decades, a small numbers of scholars have started to realize that silence is actually as important as talk. Without silence, there's no talk. Silence means thinking. And before you talk, you need to think. And the process of thinking is rarely explored. People start exploring communication only when they hear sound, when they see words, when they are exposed to speech, and they started to realize that, okay, this is something I can see, I can hear, and I can study and understand. But silence is too quiet for them to see. Nobody sees silence. So because of that, in second language acquisition, people ignore this field for a long time. Recently, this field emerged again with books and small articles from mainly Europe, a lot from Europe. There are 2 books from Australia about silence, and then a number of research works from North America. So the field begin to emerge very recently, and there's a lot to explore. So many gaps. So we bring this up for the future in case you are interested in learning something new and exploring something rare and deep. This is the way to go. I'm sharing the topic with you now on slides. Hope you can see this. First thing to get to know is silence only makes sense in context. Silence doesn't have one meaning, or we cannot just list a number of meanings and learn about silence. It's impossible. Silence only makes sense in situations. Yeah. So when you read every article, you will see they have their own context to discuss silence, and the meaning emerge from those situations. So I'm going to share with you a few different contexts where silence makes sense. And then in the end, there will be indication for how we learn and how we can research to understand more. So before that, I have to say between UAD and Monash University, there's a strong connection, informal connection. For many years, we've been visiting each other. We've sent scholars from UAD to Monash for research, including Dr. Bambang. He spent so many years at Monash University, and Monash also. I wouldn't say send everybody to UAD, but I'm the main person going to UAD all the time. I think I've been to Indonesia at least 10 times, but half the number of time I just go to UAD, yeah, for talk, for teachers, workshop, and all, and for conferences and for network. And for me, Jogja is a very special place in my heart. I love Jogja the most out of all the places in the world that I've visited. So I will start with a story. Yeah. So that's a big picture. But I think the reason why I embarked on silence as a topic for study when I was a student, we were asked to choose a topic to develop research for, and when I was a graduate student, and I didn't choose silence. I chose something else. But when I think back why I chose silence, it was rooted. The idea was rooted when I was a child. There was something related to silence when I was a child. Believe it or not, I was a very noisy child when I was born. When I started to be able to make sound and speak, I talk all the time. I make noise. I shouted. I jump around. I trouble people. So you would imagine this is me when I was a child. You can never see me pause for a picture. If you tempted to take pictures of me, the picture will be very blurred because I never stop moving, never stop talking. I even believe that I could fly. Yeah. So you could imagine in my classes in primary schools, my teachers were not happy. They thought I was an extremely troublesome person. So one day, one of my teachers called my mother and said, "Look, you have to do something about your son very soon, because with him in the classroom, nobody can teach and nobody can learn. He's just noisy and he trouble people." My mother was in tears. When my father came home from work, that day they had a big discussion and they thought they had to do something about this. So after a long chat, my mother and father decided to send me to a temple, to a Zen meditation temple. It's not really religious or anything, but it is where students learn to breathe, learn to stop thinking, learn to calm themselves down if they have problems with their verbal communication, like they talk too much or they think too hard. This is a place where you learn to balance your head. Yeah. So kids come here and for hours per day, every day, they will sit there learning to breathe, learning to say good things to their mind, but then stop saying and stop thinking and calming yourself. Clean your mind the way you wash off something dirty, just like that. So we did it, and I went to this temple twice or three times every week just to learn this. And believe it or not, it took me years to do this, and many children could not cope. They fell back, they left the temple, they cried. But I stayed with a few classmates. And so you can see this picture. Yeah. Very few people can tolerate this tough training program. And as a miracle, after years of training, I became a different person. I was quiet. I didn't talk much anymore. But it was something was against my personality. I was not born to be quiet. but I was forced to behave according to the system, to please the system. And so there was tension between who I was supposed to be and what the system wanted me to become. And in the classroom, my teachers became happier that I now sat still, rarely spoke, listening, obeying, seemingly well behaving. So behavior way, I was good, but inside me I was not good. Inside me, I was angry, I was disturbed, I was noisy, I was screaming. So it shows on the outside. This was how I looked when I was about 7 or 8 years old. Yeah, I was quiet, but not
Cute.
happily quiet, very angrily quiet, and I didn't agree with the teacher. So I was miserable.
So
Yeah.
cute, sir.
Yeah. Yes. Can you hear me well? Yeah.
So cute.
Yes. So cute. Yes. Thank you. Supposed to be cute. Yeah. Not like now, very old. But anyway, when I went to university, things began to trouble me again because I was too quiet. But in universities, the same as perhaps Indonesia, students are expected to participate in verbal discussion for ideas to flow and people to learn from each other. But I didn't interact. And so my teacher was not happy with me. One day, one of my lecturers at the university, I was enrolled in a English language and literature course at the university. One of the teachers pointed at me one day and said, "Hey, look, you have to open that mouth and speak. Otherwise, you're not going to graduate. This is an English course." And I was so scared. I couldn't speak much at that time. And I thought I'd try again to speak. So I practiced writing and reading out loud to the teacher in order to cope with the course. It was not easy at all. It was as tough as before, or even tougher, because I didn't have time to train myself enough, but I graduated anyway. And I became an English teacher in Thailand. My first job, I was teaching in an English language institute at a university called Assumption University in Bangkok, Thailand. It was where I was confronted by my students' absolute silence in the classroom. My Thai students were very, very shy. Most of them refused to speak to me. When I raised a topic for this discussion, they look away from me. And when they talk to each other in groups, they would talk in Thai. And it was very difficult to teach most of my classes. My students were very noisy. They make sound, they talk, but none of what they pronounce is English. Yeah. So after a while, I struggled and I decided to learn Thai in order to communicate with them. I will have to say I still feel very guilty until now. Now I speak Thai quite fluently, but my students never spoke English fluently. Yeah, I learned more Thai from my students than my Thai students learning English from me. So I thought it was a tragedy in my career. I was just starting my career and I failed. Then I thought, why is life like this? Can we be ourselves? Why is it that we humans have to bend our ways to make the system happy? From a silent person, I was forced to be talkative. Then from a talkative person, I was forced to go back and become silent. And then, sorry, from a silent person to go back to talk. And then being talkative now, I go to the classroom confronted by students silent. And I thought, which one is right and which one is wrong? There will be circumstances where silence is good and other situations where talk is better. And I ask myself, can we be ourselves? Can education allow students to express themselves in the way they like? I never had the answer. So I thought, how do I answer these questions? There was no one who answered me. I asked college, they said, I don't know. I asked the books. There was at the time when I was a teacher. Yeah, there was no books about silence. Very difficult to find. Very few articles and very few books that say silence is bad for your study. Learning a language requires talk. Don't keep silent. That's what most books and articles said when I was a student. And so I decided to perhaps find a way to understand by myself. But I had no method, but I keep developing this, what I call passion. And my parents used to say, son, you grow up, you do anything you like, we don't force you. So be passionate about what you want and we'll support you. So I was lucky to have good parents to agree with me on whatever I am. Then the opportunity came when I got enrolled. I was accepted in a university in England that was called Leeds Beckett University in a city called Leeds in the northern part of England. I was enrolled in a 6 years PhD program, studying psychology, childhood education, and linguistics. Yeah. So I had 2 supervisors when I was a PhD student. One is a psychologist, the other was a linguist. Yeah. So they supported me to start my research on silence. And I was very happy. I started my journey to try and understand students who was similar to me, who was forced to be talkative or silent against their will. So I went to this university in Vietnam. It was Saigon, or the second name is Ho Chi Minh City, where I was born. And there was a school called National University, and there's an institute for language teaching there. So that was the institute. I came here and observed 15 different classes. What I wanted to do was to see who is silent so I can talk with about what happened to them. I noticed in every classroom there were always a few students who were very quiet. So I singled them out, talked to them, follow them, ask them for participation in my project. I interviewed them. So there were small groups of students, of about 30 students I interviewed. But I also conducted survey on 200 students at the university to see what silence means to them. And eventually I was able to complete my thesis on silence. I will show you the most important finding from this thesis. My participants revealed to me that their silence is a process of interaction between perception and behavior. You know, in every situation, life situation, communication situation, and classroom situations, there was always the flow between what people think and what people do. We don't just come and learn, yeah? We come and observe and listen to the teacher and friends. And from that interaction, we build what our thinking is. We build viewpoint and perception. And some of the things that we build, the perception inside our mind, you can ask Dr. Bambang because his research is about beliefs and perception too. Yeah, the perception in our head is very important. It is the software that dictates our behavior and action. And so in every situation, there's something like that happening between teacher and students. Look at the chart that I constructed based on my data. So in my scenario at the time where I research, many students are shy from talking, very, very shy, or they never talk enough as they wish. And so if you look at the first bubble here, yeah, you notice that teacher develop perception about students. Students know why they were silent. There was something intimidating, their own shyness as personality and other things. But the teacher assumed that student didn't like to speak. This is something happened in teacher's beliefs. And so from this belief, which is may not be true. The teacher would decide it on the action by, okay, look at this bubble number 2, yeah. The teacher would then say to themselves, okay, my student don't want to talk, then fine, I will be lecturing. If you don't want to speak, I will lecture. But this decision is not right. It was coming from misunderstanding. And because the teacher lecture, the student look at what the teacher does and talk to themselves. Oh, my teacher is this kind of person. He doesn't want to encourage communication. He's just a lecturer. He's just a boring lecturer. Okay, fine. If you like to lecture only, then I will shut up. So students shut up for real. They decided their teacher didn't welcome participation. So they give up the effort or the desire to participate. And because of that, the teacher look and see, my students are like this kind of person. So the whole picture of silence is a serious process of misunderstanding. When I interview teachers and I interview students, I realized that their understanding towards each other was not real. So silence happened out of this dilemma. Yeah, that was a major finding from my thesis. I finished the thesis and I read it again and I realized, so there's nothing similar to my life. My life was different. My life was being forced to change rather than being misunderstood. And I need to find people similar to me to understand if education recognize this phenomenon. So a lot of my fellow students who finish their thesis, they don't want to go back to their thesis again. This is in Australia, a thesis take you from 3 to 4 years to complete if it's a PhD thesis. In America and the UK, it may take 6 to 10 years to finish a thesis. And I noticed when I look around, when my friends finish their thesis, they got sick of the topic. They say, I will never touch this topic again. Goodbye. This topic torture me. But for me, it's the opposite direction. I finish my thesis about silence and I begin to love silence a lot more. So I decided to research more into silence. I don't care whether I got a degree or the degree already or not. I didn't stop. So I started studying by myself again. And I went to a high school in the same city. I decided to repeat the same project. To understand silence, I asked students, are you silent by nature? Are you silent by force? Are you silent happily? Are you silent sadly? What do you want? I asked them these questions in high school classes. Yeah. And I got some of the answers, which I was surprised to see. Not the same as the questions that I found before. I will show you. I let you look for 1 minute. It was not really a misunderstanding anymore. Silence comes from poor condition for speech. For example, learning content is boring, so they don't feel good. They don't feel they want to respond to such boring lessons. The lack of time. The teacher goes so fast in delivering the lesson. There was no time for talking. The teacher took up all the time. The requirement of examination was writing and not speaking. No matter how much you talk, you're not required to talk in exams. So what's the point of learning and practicing something that is useless for marks? Inappropriate level of challenge. The lesson may be too easy. The lesson may be too difficult. For students to feel inspired enough to participate, the lesson should be at the right level of challenge so that you feel excited. If the level is too low, you're not excited anymore. You feel bored, you yawn, and you want to go back to sleep. But if the lesson too high over your head, you have nothing to say. Yeah. So challenge is another important factor that is linked to silence. Another thing is teacher authority. Teachers tend to only allow students to speak when they like, when the teacher likes. Students cannot say anything they want. If you say the wrong thing at the wrong time, you disturb the teacher. So the teacher has power to decide who speak, when, where, how much. So it was not easy to have the freedom to participate. And the norm in schools was silence. If you listen well, if you behave and obey, you are the best students. So the whole system and the practice in high school condition students to be quiet. Yeah, if they say something that's from memory, not from their heart or from their independent mind. I finished this project and I wrote an article about it and I read it, but I wasn't happy. It was different from my life still. But I noticed so far I've conducted 2 projects to understand silence. Each of the projects, though coming from the same design, the same question, I learned 2 different sets of findings, not the same. So I started to think, what is it that makes the 3 cases different? My case is tension within one person. The university case, the second project, which is my PhD study, was about misunderstanding, the case of misunderstanding. A third case, high school study of silence, it's about how do you name these conditions? It's about conditions that cause silence to emerge. So I thought, is it the question of level, like my case was primary school level, high school level too, The second case was university level. This case is another high school level, but not primary. And so I thought, is it true that levels cause a difference in how we understand silence? Is it just about that? Or is it something else? Is it individual personality? I read some books at the time. There were some books published in Korea and Japan. And other researchers into social silence said silence is resistance. Japanese high school students, and also Korean high school students, kept silent in class because they resisted the system. They didn't like something about the system. And so they want to stop collaborating with school and the teacher. So their silence is like a demonstration, a political demonstration. So I thought that was interesting. Is it the question of age? Besides level. Is it also the question of personality? Is it also the question of culture? Let's say, would silence in Indonesia be different from silence in Australia? So I thought about this and I decided to perhaps find opportunity to research silence in different countries. And so I did. The opportunity came when I first got my job at Monash University. That was 2007, 15 years ago. I was accepted into Monash University as a lecturer. The building you see in the picture is a part of Monash University, the art faculty, where I started my career in Australia. I noticed that in every class, I was teaching 3rd year and 4th year students, and mostly they are white Anglo-Australian students. There were no foreign students at all. I noticed in every class that I taught, there was always a few white students who were very silent. And I thought that's interesting. What I learned from books and journals was that silence came from shyness and upbringing in Asian context. like students from China, students from some part of Southeast Asia and East Asia. Sometimes people respect authority and they dare not speak. And so silence is an imported concept from some Asian cultures. That's what the book said. But here in the West, I noticed some students are seriously silent. So the silence to some extent also come from Western cultures. So I decided to study Australian silence to see if silence exists, and if it does, is it different from Asian silence? So I spent time on 10 students. I pick from every class 1 or 2 students who are very quiet, and I interview them about their behavior. Why are you silent? Are you okay? Do you like the lesson? Do you hate the lesson? Do you enjoy learning? Is anything wrong with you? Is your silence pleasant, or is your silence angry? I show you the outcome of my study of Australian silence now. In Australian students' view, they say someone who is talkative in their mother tongue can be silent in a foreign language. So language decides silence or speech. Language. Many of them also pointed to the direction where their silence is shaped by different factors. There are factors that cause silence to take place. Like cooking, you need ingredients to cook a dish. So a dish is cooked from specific ingredients. Without those ingredients, you cannot cook that dish. Silence works very much in the same way as that. So here are the factors that decide student silence. Culture of the classroom, not the country. Yeah. Some classroom cause you to speak. Some classroom cause you to be quiet. We don't know why, but there are classrooms like that. Relationship with peers and with teachers. Personality of every student, or different students together, they influence each other. The mood of the day, the mood of the lesson, the content of every lesson and the course, the receptivity of the teacher. When students speak, the way teachers treat that speech is called receptivity. Like you talk and someone say, lovely, tell me more. Or some teachers say, fine, let's move on. It affects your feeling, how teachers respond to you. And it directs the way you continue to participate or withdraw into yourself. Also, students' inspiration coming from the climate of classroom learning, and again, the degrees of challenge in every lesson. And so I noticed silence in this research project became very complex. New ideas coming into this project that I didn't see before. And I would have stopped research silence if I didn't see new ideas, but I keep seeing new ideas coming. So far, there were 3 projects in my life, and every project produced different findings, although I follow exactly the same design. And again, the design is, why are you silent? Are you happy? Are you sad? Do you use silence for learning? What factors affect your silence? These questions you can still use in your own inquiry. Yeah. If you like to think about silence, these questions are also for you. Then I decided to continue my projects in different contexts. So I went to, before I went to another country, I read more into articles about silence at the time between 2007 and 2010. There were more articles about silence being published in journals. And I noticed a large numbers of these articles point to this direction, where they say, particularly students from East Asia, such as China, Japan, Korea, they are silenced because they come from a Confucius culture, where silence is valued, silence is respected and nurtured. And so silence comes from East Asia. Silence comes from the teaching of Confucius. So I try to read into the teaching of Confucius to see if Confucius really promotes silence. I saw some, but I also saw that Confucius promoted talk as well. Confucius said, learning is a journey of asking. If you do not ask, you do not learn. You have to ask when you learn. Speech is part of learning. And I realized that many Western scholars avoided reading this part of Confucius' teaching. They just took out what they liked to say and they left speech behind from these resources. And I thought, that wasn't fair. I want to read more about Confucius' teaching. So I got help from colleagues and even students from these countries, China, Korea, Japan, to read into old books about silence and speech. And then next trip, I went to Japan, where I conducted a study on 120 students in high school in Japan. I asked them, why are you silent? Are you happy? Are you sad? Do you use silence for learning? Do you use silence for something negative? How do you feel about silence? When I got back the data was not good, was filled with misunderstanding. The student did not understand my question. Many students left the answer blank. They thought silence is what we experience all our life as a student. Why are you asking about silence? We don't know. What do you want? Yeah. So my data was useless. Yeah. And the next thing I did was I decided to study Japanese students who have been to the West, who were in situation when they was forced to speak. And after they can speak, I want them to think about their silence before and see how they feel about speech and how they feel about silence. I want them to compare. I asked them, so as a student growing up learning through speech and silence, how do you feel? Which one do you value more? Which one make more sense to you as a student, as a learner? Which of them is more of a powerful learning tool for you that you enjoy, that make you learn better? So these questions seems more practical. So they answer me. See, here are the answers. In Japanese students' view, every individual has a dual responsibility, not only towards their own learning, but also learning of the community. They say, when I am silent, I'm not just silent for me. I'm silent for others, because if I don't keep silent, others cannot learn. Either my colleague and my peers, my classmates need silent time to think. If I'm noisy, they can't think. They also need silent time to talk. If I don't shut up, how can they speak? They also said, if they had to choose between talk and silence, they're not sure. At that point, they should talk or they should keep silent. If they're not sure, they decided to keep silent. It's more safe. I asked why more safe? They said, because between talk and silence, talk hurts, silence doesn't. Can you believe it? I want you to imagine a life situation when you are friends with someone. Sometimes you have a friend and you're not happy with your friend anymore. Is it because of talk? Or is it because of silence? Or is it because of both? Sometimes your friend says something wrong about you or to you or behind you. It's the talk that causes you to be silent toward them. You think they're not a good friend anymore. So although you are silent, you're silent because of talk, and you're silent because talk hurts. Yeah, that's what they told me. And they said, okay, so you don't talk, you listen. Is it okay? Can you learn through just listening? They said, yes, why not? When I listen, I make connection. I'm not passive. I'm still reaching out to my learning content. I'm still reaching out to my teacher. and classmates. Nothing wrong. Listening is connecting. Yeah. If you look at the word listen, yeah, LISTEN, if you jumble these alphabets around, the word listen will become the word silence. Students say, listen means silent. Yeah. Silent is not useless. Silent is useful. They also say silent allows a conversation to take place quietly inside everybody. So for them, the answer is silent is a way of learning. Nothing wrong with silence. But the project I conducted in high school in Vietnam said silent is wrong. Silent means disaster from the system. The system doing wrong thing. Challenge is not correct. Teacher too authoritative. The system is boring. All the wrong thing is connected with silence. But here, all the right things are connected with silence. Can you believe it? I was confused and interested at the same time enough to continue research teaching into silence, because now one of my questions is being answered. And that question is, does silence really mean different things across different cultures? The answer now is beginning to be yes. Yeah. Silent in Vietnam, silent in Australia, and silent in Japan are not the same. So I decided to move on. I wish I had a longer life to spend at least 1 year in every country, and 1 year definitely should be in Indonesia, study Indonesian silent. But my friend Dr. Bambang is already there for me, asking you to help us with this idea of how silent means. I had another project conducted in Indonesia, but I will tell you about it in the future because it was related to tasks rather than silence. Yeah. So I will talk to you in the future about my project in Indonesia. But right now, I'm flying to China. I don't know if you recognize this picture through the media, but this is Wuhan. Yeah. Wuhan is where COVID-19 came from. But at that time, Wuhan was safe when I went there. Wuhan is the city in China that has the second largest numbers of universities in the whole mainland. It's a big city and very well-educated city. So I decided to come here. Less noisy than Beijing, but I have connections who helped me conducted a survey. And then back in Australia, I studied 10 Chinese students who tell me what they think about silence. So I will present to you the finding from China, which again is not the same. I would like to tell you a story. This is a story that Chinese students like to tell me about their silence. They said once upon a time there was a flea, trapped in a bottle. Every day the flea tried to get out of the bottle, but it couldn't because there was a cap on top of the bottle. There was a lid. And no matter how hard it tried, the lid was there. You cannot jump out. It's like a prison. After some time, one day the lid was removed, but you notice the flea continued to stay in the bottle. Why didn't it jump out now that they have a way to escape? We learned that although the lid was not up there, it was in their mind. The flea was tired. It thought the cap was still there. It didn't even bother to look. How stupid it is. Yeah. But then that was the story. Chinese students told me that there was a gap between what was expected of them in high school and what was expected of them as behavior in university. They said in high school, the teacher expected them to be quiet, obedient, disciplined, accepting what is taught. You are a good student if you listen well, you follow, and you don't talk much. However, when you went to university, you were expected the opposite. You were only a good student if you open your mouth and participate in classroom discussion, independently thinking, voicing ideas, questioning issues. You notice there's a gap here. These two behaviors are very similar to my life. Yeah. Maybe it was similar to Indonesian context too. In primary school, quiet students look good, but in university they don't. And so the trouble is, even students know that the expectation towards them has changed. They continue to remain quiet. Why? Because they've been so used to quietness. Going back to the story of the flea. Yeah. The flea is the student. The bottle is silence, expectation. The lid was expectation towards silence. The lid was there for students to keep themselves silent in the bottle. One day, the expectation was removed. You don't have to be silent anymore, folks. You can talk now. But no, students refuse to talk. Why? Because the reluctance to break silence is now with them. And the student continue to believe that silence is their nature. I conducted my next project in Korea, and I got a very different set of findings as well. In Korean students' view, silence is a form of resistance. Silence means I disagree with you. That's what silence means to many students. I read about this in some books published in Korea and Japan, and the researcher found out the same thing. Also, silence has a positive side to it. They said silence allows monitoring words. Monitoring means manage, build. Yeah. By silence, students can build meaning inside them to avoid hurrying towards talk that is not high quality. Yeah. So the meaning of silence now is silence help talk to be of high quality. Without silence, talk is boring, yeah, lacking in meaning. In other words, they say silence help nurture or incubate ability for future communication. Without thoughtful silence, you cannot communicate successfully. And I think these ideas have a lot of implications in teaching and learning, because it allows us to be aware of the need for our students to be silent in order to learn well before they can talk. Back in Monash University, I remember two projects I conducted in Vietnam about silence, which gave me two different sets of findings. I thought what is unique about silence in Vietnamese culture? I wanted to know, because the silent projects I conducted before were not the same. So I couldn't say they represent the culture. I had to learn more. So I interviewed 10 Vietnamese students in Australia, those who were exposed to talk, to see if their silence was still the same. At the silent project before, you remember, the first project, silence was misunderstanding. The second project, silence come from failure in the system. And the third project on Vietnamese students that I conducted in Australia gave me some of these findings, which are very, very different. They said, silence is a choice. I am silenced because I am the boss. I decide when I'm talking, and I decided when I'm quiet. I am in control of my decision. That's what they said. How different from the projects before. They also said something similar to the Korean student. They said silence helped me enhance the quality of talk if I'm silent and thoughtful enough. Later, when I open my mouth to participate, I say something valuable. They also tell me that between silence and talk, they perform something in between. They say sometimes they talk to themselves, and that's inner speech, inner talk, or inner speech. If you read into the literature, you will find there are articles about inner speech. Yeah. And then there's a moment where they are not really silent, but not really talking either. They're whispering very quietly to themselves. For example, if you cannot find your key or your handphone, you then say, oh no, where's my key? Where's my handphone? You whisper subconsciously to yourself. That is called private talk or private speech. Students do this a lot in their study. Yeah. Sometimes when you have a difficult question or difficult problem, and you need to take yourself through a process of solving the issue, you can talk, yeah, without knowing you're talking. Or sometimes during the lecture, you want to ask the lecturer a question, but you don't want to interrupt or disrupt the flow of discussion. Also, you don't want the teacher to notice you. You don't want to stand out, or you don't want to look stupid. So you rather talk to the person next to you first. That's a whispering, yeah, which is called insider speech. So if you draw a line between silence and talk, you have 3 more dots in the middle. And those dots are inner speech. They are close to silence, but they're not. In the middle, you have private speech. They stay right in the middle between silence and speech. And then there's another dot called insider speech. It stays close to talk, but they're not talk. It's not talk. So now we discover that silence and talk are not completely opposite. They are just there to shape other things in between. Yeah. I also learned from the same project that both talk and silence can be good and can be bad. It's very hard to say which one is better. We can't, depending on situations. Silence can be productive or destructive. Talk, likewise, can also be productive and destructive. Here are some examples. They say if reasonable talk keeps conversation going both ways. Reasonable silence leaves space for
Nhưng
more
mà thực ra
conversation.
trong giáo pháp là những cái vị sư tăng á,
Someone is talking. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, Loan, are you talking to someone? So this is good talk and good silence. The second example is about the value of talk and silence as well. Talk is only valuable when it makes sense to listeners, and silence is only valuable when it is wisely employed for mental processing in the head. Sometimes talk and silence can be negative. Here is an example. If excessive talk among a few class members dominates class time and inhibits the rest of the class, excessive silence holds students back from listening to one another's contributions. And so here you see 4 sides of the picture. Yeah, good talk, good silence, bad talk, and bad silence. It's very hard to compare talk and silence independently. We have to look at the whole context. So important findings from all my projects put together. Silence is not independent from talk. It is not the opposite to talk anymore. Silence is deeply connected to talk. Silence is a part of talk. Sometimes you ask someone a question, they don't answer. That may have a meaning. For example, you say, I left my money on the table. Did you take it? The other person keeps silent. You probably believe that he took it. Yeah. So silence is talk. Silence has meaning. Yeah. Or you ask someone to go out with you. You say, I'm going to the meeting or to the movie. Are you coming? The other person keep quiet. Would you say they want to come or not? Probably not. Yeah. Would you like to eat this? Then you keep quiet. What's the answer? Probably no. Yeah. So you see, silence has talk inside it. And I also learned that both silent and talk perform the same function. If you use silent to agree, you also use talk to agree. If you use silent to disagree, you also use talk to disagree. I have a sister who fell in love with a boy that my parents don't like. So one day my parents confronted my sister and said, "Do you love that boy or not?" My sister did not answer. When she did not answer, her silence means yes. Sometimes it means no, because you say, "Are you going with me?" Silent. That silent means no. So you see, we hardly see this in our everyday life, that silence speak as well. Yeah. So those are just basic example to show us that both silent and talk say the same thing. And some examples of the thing that silent and talk both say is mediating, preparing, responding, comparing, understanding. If you write down the function of silent and talk, there could be 100 that they share. So that was the end of my, not my presentation yet, but the basic literature about the meaning of silence. I pause here. In the next part, I will show you how to research into silence for yourself. I will show you some methods, but before I do that, maybe 1 or 2 minutes for reflection to see if you have any questions for me, any comment. How do you feel about this content that I just shared with you?
Okay, guys, if you have any questions, you can just ask now. Before that is moving to the next sessions.
Yes.
Yes, Argi, please.
Yes, please ask. Yeah, Aki. Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Dat Bao.
Yes.
Long time no see.
Yes, good to see you again, my friend.
Yeah. So I think that silence is very interesting in education. I think that many silent definition tend to reverse to the negative one, yeah, as the passive, passive behavior. And since our curriculum also encourage the students to be actively speaking. And I think that it is very interesting to do a research in silent in online teaching. Since I observed that when we conduct a meeting or doing online learning, it sometimes it needs 2 or 3 minutes for a student to respond teacher question. Yeah. So yeah, I think that if you probably interest in that kind of research about silent in online teaching, and what is the factor of that, and then one of my friends who the lecturer, he experienced a lot about one-way lecturer when she gave a presentation, and then the whole class is doing an off camera, and also it is silent at that time. Yeah? It's only one-way communication, and I think that it's good to know that what factor makes the silent in the learning process, online learning. Does the student sleep at that time, or doing multiple things? For instance, they go by train, but they join the class and others. So yeah, silent is very interesting, and I think that your presentation opened my understanding or insight about silent, and gives me idea about a research in online teaching.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. It's a huge area. Recently, there are scholars who started writing about online teaching and learning, and in the middle of the discussion, there will be challenges happening to teaching and learning online, and among those challenges, is communication issues. Some of the teachers feel cut off from students when they don't participate and when they don't communicate, whether they will participate or not. Teachers can't tell, when students turn off camera, turn off microphone, and the teacher say, do you understand the lesson? No answer. Do you have any question? No answer. Have you read your article? No answer. Did you write anything? No answer. And will you get back to me? No answer. Yeah. And where are you? No face. Can you say yes? Are you there? No yes. Yeah. So that's absolute silence. Yeah. I recently researched into online silence. It's a huge area. Online silence. What I presented to you today was face-to-face silence. Online silence is a whole new area that is unexplored. But recently, I looked into the last 2 years. I looked into online silence, and I realized I'm writing a book about online silence. The book will be published next year. In the book, I classify online silence into eight different types of online silence. And in order to understand, you need to observe, you need to research, you need to experience, and you need to somehow find ways to get data from the whole scenario, not just from students. There are 8. I will say them to you now, but I will let you read in the future. Number 1 is academic engagement. They are silent because they learn, they're reading, they're busy reading. You cannot force them to get back to you quick enough. They will. But for the moment, they read very hard and they make notes and they learn well. Their silence is academic engagement. Number 2, social engagement. They're not talking to you, but they're talking to their friends by text, by maybe WhatsApp, WeChat, Line, Zalo, and Viber. Yeah. So they have ways to talking to their friend, but not to you yet. They need time. But they need to socialize first before getting back to you. That's social engagement. Something is happened that benefits their learning, but we just don't know. We just can't tell. Social engagement. Number 3 is affective engagement. Affective means feeling. Although, suppose I was talking just now and you were listening, I couldn't see your reaction. I don't know if you understood me or if you struggled or if you were happy or you were not happy. I couldn't tell, but I'm sure out there among you, there are people who smile, who nod, who understood, who like what I say, yeah, who agree and who disagree. You have feeling, but I just can't see your feeling. There was no way for you to communicate your feeling to me if you don't use icon, yeah. So the number 3, affective engagement. You are emotionally involved. You enjoy the lecture. Just that you didn't say, but I know you're happy. Yeah. Number 3 is affective engagement. Number 4 is technological engagement. You're not talking at the moment, but you are doing technological work to go through the lesson. You go online, you access reading. You go online, you respond to tasks. You write ideas and postings on forums. You search more materials to understand the topic. You're writing an essay. You are involved in some way using technology. Yeah. So I repeat, number 1, academic engagement. 2, social engagement, affective engagement, and technological engagement. The other 4 are the flip side of all those 4. You have academic disengagement when students don't understand. And of course, they have nothing to say. They suffer from not coping with the content of the lesson. Academic disengagement. And then there is social disengagement. They don't want to talk to anyone. They just want to listen to you and play their computer game at the same time, or play with a friend, yeah, or play with their phone. They're not really involved. Half of their brain is with you. The other half is with something else. They're socializing with other, not with you. So social disengagement. That was number 6 already. 2 more. Number 7, affective disengagement. They don't like the lesson. They don't like the content of our lesson. They don't like the teacher. They want another teacher. They don't feel good. They don't like this topic. Their parents force them to study. They don't like to study. So by feeling they are not happy with study. Yeah. Affective disengagement. And number 8 is technological disengagement. They struggle to access resource. You say you posted documents up on the Moodle side, on the Blackboard side, or whatever side it is for a student to download and learn, but they couldn't access. They couldn't go into the chat room to have a discussion with peers. They struggle technologically. They don't have internet. Some of them don't even have a computer. They have to go to the library to use computer there. And so they struggle with technology. So the whole picture of online silence cover these 8. And if you ask me, how do you know which one is happening? The answer is research. You can't come to a Zoom lesson and you can tell which student exhibit which kind of engagement or disengagement. It's completely impossible. So it takes research to understand, and it takes teacher creativity to find out from your class. Suppose you are teaching a class of 20 students. You might wish to conduct a survey or talk to them individually, or raise issue for students to post and respond, or research, interview people, or conduct a group interview. So it's entirely up to us to find out. But the picture of online silence is extremely complex and difficult to understand. But I think that was the outcome of my research so far, that I will put in the book that will publish in the middle of next year. Yeah, when I have it, I would recommend it to Dr. Bambang to show you the book. Yeah, it's another series of research that I didn't report in this discussion. I hope I answer a bit of your question, my friend.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Dat Bao.
No worries. Any more reflection or questions for me? Yes. Yes. Someone else raised your hand. Please speak
Yes,
to
please.
us.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dat Bao. I am Yugi
Yes.
Antoro.
Yes.
Okay, to the point, yeah. We have
Yes.
been so familiar, yeah, with the
Yes. Okay.
silent way method.
Yes.
The silent way method. It is
Yes.
like the name of method of language teaching,
Yes.
yeah. Based on the premise that teachers should be silent as much as possible in the classroom, but the learner should be encouraged to produce as much language as possible, right? And then the silent way is often criticized of being harsh method. Now, the learner works in a isolating and communication is lacking badly, yeah, in silent way classroom, because with minimum help on the part of the teacher. Now,
exactly.
the silent way method may put the learning itself and has kind of unfavorable situation. How to overcome unfavorable situation in such classroom?
Right.
Mr. Dat Bao, thank you.
Sure, good question. Thank you. Now, the silent way didn't survive. It was an exciting method. It was unique. It was unusual, and people talk about it at the time. It was back in the 70s, but the silent way was not successful as an approach. First of all, because the silent way is lacking in input. The teacher keeps silent for students to talk, but the teacher didn't manage to provide sufficient input. So without input, there was no output. We know from SLA theory. Yeah, that's one thing. Second, communication situation is not natural. Like the teacher will point at the door or close the door, and student will say, "You are closing the door." So it's fun as a game, but the communication doesn't reflect real world interaction at all. So it doesn't survive because it's not real, and it doesn't survive because it doesn't follow the natural route of progression in second language acquisition. And it was famous because it was fun and interesting. And it was famous because it comes from a good intention from the teacher to step back for students to use the space to learn. Yeah. But recently, there have been a few articles in Europe about not the silent way, but they call it teacher silent. They say it's very important for teacher to know when to shut up when to talk, how much to say, and how to organize for students to speak. In order to create the space for students to speak, the teacher needs to occasionally and in a timely manner step back and keep quiet. Some teachers don't have this habit or awareness. If the class is silent, the teacher will take the opportunity to fill in silence with a lot of meaningless talk, because they feel if I'm not talking, I'm not teaching, I'm not working, I will not get paid. Yeah? I get paid for open my mouth and make sound. The number of sounds that I make will lead to the number of money in my pocket. But that's not true. Yeah, that's totally a bad decision. So there were a few articles, not many, that started to talk about teacher silence, teacher use of silence, or in other words, pedagogical use of strategic silence from the point of view of teaching. And recent research has shown that experienced teachers use silence in the classroom. They do. Sometimes they are aware that they need to shut up, then they shut up at a very good time. But inexperienced teachers keep talking constantly, and they are not aware of how interrupting they are to students' learning. So silent in teaching is an emerging sub area in silent studies at the moment. But the silent way didn't survive. Yeah. The silent way is a lovely idea, but it has died a long time ago. Yeah. I hope I answer a bit of your questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, I think you can move on to the next.
I will move on to the next part. The next part is shorter. I'm guiding you through a process of researching on silence. There would be so many different methods. I will name them, but I will not go into them. I'll go into just one. Phenomenology is a method of studying silence. Phenomenology. If you like, you can read, but you don't have to. Phenomenology. Second is action research. Again, phenomenology is study of phenomenon. Look into critical incident. You observe a class, or you interview some people, and you find out stories and moments that are unique, special, critical, provocative, and you study incidents only, or scenarios only. Yeah, that's phenomenology. Two is action research. Action research is trying to change. Suppose you go into a class where students suffer from silence. They don't want to be silent, they hate silence, but they are silent because the situation forced them to be. And you want to change that. You want to help students talk. But you only help students talk after you have known and feel clear that these students say they suffer from silence. They say, please help us. We are silent, but we feel bad. Come and help us. Then that's action research. Yeah. Very similar is experimental research. Action research is to change something for the better, improving what is going wrong. Experimental research can be that, but it can also be illuminating knowledge, trying to find out something that you don't know through an experiment. Yeah. For example, you have 3 classes. In one class, you use picture to get students to talk more. In the second class, you use imagination. In the third class, you use drama. And in the fourth class, you use questions. And you want to see which element is most stimulating to students' participation. That's experimental research. There will be grounded theory. There will be other methods such as quantitative, qualitative, in-depth qualitative research, and so on. Now, I don't encourage you to go into this area. They're very difficult. Yeah. They require a lot of research experience. One approach that I encourage you to go into, which is easy and fun, and you can learn quickly, is called ethnography. I'm introducing ethnography to you now. Ethnography is the study of situation, including many factors that get involved in a situation that change the nature of the topic. Yeah. For example, if you want to study relationship, the study of relationship in a setting, you go and you look, you see how people interact, you communicate, or you observe only, and you see all sides of all the parties involved in the communication scenario. You observe talk, you observe behavior, you observe everything. That's ethnography, observing everything. But that too is also difficult. Yeah, I wouldn't encourage that either. What I really want to encourage you to look into is autoethnography, and this is a new emerging method of research that came maybe 10 years back. Yeah, until now it's still popular. There are many reasons for this tradition to come up and become interesting and attractive. First, it's interesting. Second, it's easy to learn. 3, it's easy to write and report, easy to share. 4, easy to produce new ideas. Sometimes we go into a field following certain approach, and what we research is difficult and what we produce is not new. So hard and easy to fail and not coming to anything exciting or original. But with autoethnography, you might come up with something that people have not come up with, easily producing new ideas. Yeah. Okay, so autoethnography, I break down this. There are sections in this segments of words. Auto means one thing, ethno means another thing, graphy means another thing. What does this concept mean? Autoethnography is an approach to research that seeks to do the following 3 things. Just the overall concept, and I'll explain how to do it step by step. Describe and analyze. Describe and analyze. It's graphy. Graphy means recording, documenting, writing. Describe and analyze is graphy. Yeah. Auto is talking about yourself, personal experience, talking about you. You research yourself. Yeah. That's called auto. Yeah. And doing that for cultural understanding or some kind of understanding, but mainly culture. Yeah. Culture doesn't mean country. Yeah. Culture can mean the style of something. Culture means style. Like you have your own personal culture. You talk in this way. You look and move in this way. That's your culture. Your class have a style of communication and working. That's the class culture. Jogja has a special culture. People in Jogja very friendly. Yeah. So culture means that style. You understand some style. That's called ethno. So together, autoethnography means the study of yourself to understand some style in a topic to describe and analyze the topic. Yeah. That's the approach now. Methodology. What do we do to practice this methodology? You need to do the following thing if you are willing to do any of them independently from each other. You can start practicing tomorrow. Yeah, there are these things that you might like to do and you might enjoy. Yeah. Number 1 is journaling. Journaling means diary writing. You observe when you see something happen. You have a notebook or you put in your iPad or laptop, you type down what you see as interesting. Just an entry. An entry can be 1 sentence to 2 pages. Up to you. Anything emerging as interesting, thought-provoking, you write it down. The way you write down is you describe what happened. For example, today you ask students a question in your classroom, but your student don't answer. And you say, okay, I give you 5 minutes to think and answer me. After 5 minutes, no answer. So you will write that in your diary. You say, normally when I give students time to think and they talk. But today they don't. What's wrong with my method? What's wrong with the content? I need to describe it first, then I go talk to them. So you document by way of journaling, yeah, the narrative described. And then you reflect. So describe is, I ask, they don't answer. I give time, they don't talk. I'm hopeless. I will reflect on this. Why? I thought maybe this, maybe that. So you write about it in a paragraph. That's the first thing you do if you want this methodology. Yeah. Keep that. You don't have to do it every day. Maybe once in a while. Sometimes maybe a week, twice is enough. Yeah. If you want to start investigating. And then the second thing you might like to do is examining records. Record is just a general word for documents. Any document, normally written or recorded documents, maybe a video of a lesson, maybe a film that students make as a project in your class, maybe your students' work, maybe your marking, maybe an exercise you give students, some homework, maybe an activity, maybe that documentation of how students respond to an activity, maybe a video recording of how students respond to your task, maybe student portfolio collection of their essay, their favorite work, anything that they produce as materials before teaching, after teaching, during teaching, any material like that can be examined. Yeah, you keep track of those. Yeah. Number 3 is interview. Yeah. With ethnography, you interview other people, but with autoethnography, you interview yourself. You ask yourself, for example, am I a silent person? Yes or no? Or sometimes yes, sometimes no. When yes, when no. You answer yourself. Yeah. And after you've answered yourself, you've written down your record. Then you go ask other people the same thing. And so ethnography can mean comparing what your situation is and what others. So that by understanding others, you also understand yourself. You realize how different you are from the rest. Yeah. So these are practice that you can start performing as practice. Yeah. I will show you steps. So first I show you what the method means. Then I show you what action you can take to practice this method. Number 3, component. What are the things that you need to produce in the end in order to shape this method? And maybe you can see this as some kind of a procedure. There are components that you need to produce. Also, there are the steps that you need to take to build a research project by way of autoethnography. First of all, you describe the context. You have a topic. For example, you want to research on first year student silence in English department, English linguistic or literature study program in UAD, yeah. And you want to follow a group of 3 students, or you want to study 1 student, or you want to study yourself as a teacher. But you need to describe the context. What's the context like? Where? How long does the course last? What are factors? What are constraints in the context? What is interesting about the course? What's the content of the course? You describe the whole situation for me. First thing to do. Second, you choose participant. Could be you. Yeah. As a teacher, you don't have to research on teaching all the time. As a teacher, every teacher is a learner. You are not a student, of course, but we are learners, you and I. At the moment I'm talking, we are all learners, all the same. We learn things all the time. So we have the responsibility to improve, and we learn through both talk and silence. So participant can be us, but participant can be colleague teachers, can be students. You define. There's no right or wrong. Whoever you choose, whatever number is okay. 1 person, 10 people, fine. Once you've done that, you begin to pay attention to anecdotes. Anecdotes means stories or experiences. You collect 1 or more, and you describe the experience. It's called vignettes. Vignette is is a word to mean a story, an anecdote. But recently, vignette study is a field of study. Yeah, in education, people study vignette. You describe something happening to you, maybe within 5 minutes, within 3 months, within 10 years, up to you. A vignette can be 1 minute to 100 years. Yeah, doesn't matter. But a vignette is something happening. For example, someone lied to me, a teacher discouraged me, a mentor helped me, a student provoked me. Can be a vignette. A vignette can be anything. So provocative means thought-provoking, that makes you think. An event that makes you think is a vignette. So write it down. Yeah. If there is talk in it, there's silence in it, write it down. And then respond to it, or look for the response to that vignette. What happened in the story? Who responded to the story? What kind of belief shaped the story? Like one student leave your class because they think you are boring. So their belief is they want enjoyment. Yeah, belief of the people in the story. Who are involved in the story? What kind of change happened? And what you learn from this. Yeah. So build a story for me. That's step number 3. Step number 4 is you conduct an interview, again, interviewing yourself or interviewing a friend. And then you take out important quotes, underline important things that people say, including you, in the interview. Next, you collect images from the document. Maybe students draw a picture that day to learn, and they spend silent time drawing a picture later on. That picture allowed them to generate ideas and allow them to share some idea with a peer or present it to the class. So you take picture of that image that helps speech. Yeah, an example. Yeah, images. And you also study material related to the story. Maybe the story is about how children learn from a textbook. So you study that lesson in the textbook. Maybe the vignette has to do with how 2 students draw one picture and have a conversation in the process of drawing. Yeah, that picture is material. Yeah. So collect the material and analyze the material. What exactly about that material that allows speech? Then you go to analysis. You analyze interview data, materials, vignettes, situation. You analyze it. You discuss the situation through which you are critical of what's going on. Critical means, is there something wrong? Is there something noticeable? Is there something special? Something I should notice and understand more? That's critical thinking. Also, self-critical thinking means, what did I do at that time? If you're studying yourself, did I say something wrong? Should I be silent when I was not? When I was not supposed to be? Should I talk, but I didn't? Did I do anything right? What should I have done? Am I proud of myself? That's self-critical. Yeah. So you analyze the situation involving yourself and all the resources you can get from interview data and documents. Through the analysis, you connect those ideas together. And then once you've done that, you have some finding emerging. You then look into the literature to see, is what I found similar to what is there in the literature? Is there a gap? Am I contributing any new ideas? Yeah. And finally, from that, you draw implication for teaching and learning. One example of implication is, through this project, I learned that teachers should step back and keep silent at least 40% of class time. If I talk more than 60%, I am a bad teacher. My research told me that. That is an example, yeah, of implication, yeah. So once you practice the thing I showed you above, first step, yeah, to understand the method and practice these. Then after practice, you choose a topic. Yeah, again, a topic can be studying myself as a learner. I am a teacher, but I study myself as a learner. In this learning journey, how did I use silence to understand something? Yeah. So you choose a topic and you choose a participant. Once you have a topic and participant, you go through this process. For me, it looks complex, but if you take care of each of them one by one carefully, you can always go back and modify. But roughly, if you make the effort to perform these actions, you have a project is taking shape already. And the next thing to do, I give you this article. It is available online. You go to Google Scholar and you type this. You have an article, and I think it has an interesting structure there for you to put these things together. Yeah. Maybe there will not be enough time for me to show the article, but you can easily look at it yourself and see the article follow this approach. Yeah. Ethnographic doesn't mean one person. Yeah. Auto means self, but self doesn't mean one person. When you take a selfie, you take a picture of you, but sometimes you take a selfie of 10 people. So auto also include more people than one. My suggestion is you start with yourself first. When your friends or colleagues starting with themselves, and then you have a meeting with them and you decide, we will present together. So you take turn in a meeting of 10 people or 20 people in the room who've started a project that they chose. We will take turn presenting, each person presenting maybe 10 minutes to get response. And then eventually we'll find out that in the room, there are groups that can be formed together because you look at similar things here. So you can have a dual ethnography, yeah, where two people share two vignettes that connect to the same theme or the same specific issue. You can find 5 people in the room that have the same or similar experience. You can have a meeting and write one article, multiple ethnographic case study of your journey, learning through silence and speech. Yeah, you don't have to study silence alone. You can study silence with speech, how you move from silence to speech, how you move from speech to silence, or how you alternate between speech and silence. When are you silent and when do you speak? So the study is not limited to silence, no. Study is about silence in relation to speech in a certain pattern. So definitely eventually have a meeting and decide, maybe today maybe 20 people are attending this discussion with me today. So these 20 people will go away and start doing something. And in a month's time, you get together in a room and decide, okay, we will write 4 articles. Each article has 5 authors. Yeah. And then if you like, Dr. Bambang and I will comment on your work. So to help you find way to publish your work. This is not difficult. This is a lovely, enjoyable journey that may look unknown to us when we haven't started. But the moment you collect data, you will love your project. This is like going to see a movie. You discover episode and begin to see meaning. That is when you enjoy. If we don't start, we will never enjoy anything. So what I suggest you do is try this approach. It's easy, it's fun, and it has strong potential to produce new ideas. And there's a sample for you to follow. If you don't like this sample, you can go to Google Scholar, and under the same article, you will see similar article and use similar sample from ethnographic study. Yeah, but I find this article quite interesting and easy to write like. Yeah, I think that's all for our discussion today, but you can, yeah, this is the article if you like to take a picture or take notes. Yeah, it's available on open access. Yeah. So thank you very much for your engagement. Any comment, suggestion, you're welcome. Someone type into the chat box. Let me see. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dad.
Just quoting it. Yeah, credibility is when you use multiple sources of data. When you study yourself, you're not just interviewing. You observe the context and tell the story of context. That's true. You look into documentation, look at the resources that you use. So at least 3 resources combined to tell the same story. Yeah. Another way to create credibility, yeah, trustworthiness, or another word for trustworthiness is credibility. We don't talk about credibility and reliability here, no. We talk about, yes, you choose the right word, trustworthiness or credibility, by way of beside multiple resources, you can use multiple participants. Instead of studying yourself alone, you study in 3 people, and each person present a vignette to the other 2 to comment and connect. And then the second present his or her vignette, the other 2 comment and connect. Eventually, you have 3 vignettes with 3 sets of comments from the other 2 people. That will produce data. And you allow these pieces of data to interact to find the common ground. What is it that the 3 vignettes share similarly? What is it that the 3 vignettes differs? What do you learn from that similarity and differences? Those moments of connection and mutual juxtaposition is what shapes trustworthiness. Yeah. I hope I respond to your question. I will stop sharing to see if you have more for me to respond to. Any thoughts? Do you think that sounds doable? Does it sound difficult? Interesting?
Thank you, Dad, for your presentations.
Yes, Ahmad.
Everyone is inspired by your presentations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, guys, do you have any questions to us? Or do you think that's already sufficient to equip yourself with the ideas to conduct a research on silence?
Yes. If you like, I will visit again in the future after you practice, after you collect data and started to build your case, have something to share with me. We'll have a meeting in which maybe 10 of us volunteer to present. Each person present 10 minutes. And Dr. Bamba and I will comment so that we build maybe different articles together. Yeah. Does that sound like a good plan? Maybe
that's good, Dad.
2 months later. Yes.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yes. Thank you, Bamba. Yeah.
So thank you very much for your kindness, Dad, to offer your valuable time to share with us.
No worries. Anytime. I will visit Jogja when COVID is over.
Inshallah. We will invite you, Dad.
Yes.
Okay, it's already Asar time here, Dad. So we have to
so
go.
I will say goodbye I will leave you with the rest for your discussion. Yeah. You take care. I will see you in the future. Inshallah. Bye. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, Dad. Okay, guys. So that's it for Dad's presentations. I hope you are inspired with what he has presented. And he has already invited us, everyone, to start research on silence. And Dad is offering himself to supervise. And I'm also here to supervise you. So if you can do it very fast, you don't have to do it on your own. You can just collaborate with your friends. And then later on, you can publish in our journal, inshallah. Okay, so please keep in mind this topic. I believe you have already screenshot all that presentation, especially with the findings and other things. So you can use them as your references later, inshallah. Okay. All right, I'm afraid I have to go to masjid now, and I believe you also need to go to masjid for Ashar. So we'll meet again, inshallah, next week. Okay, guys?
Sure.
Okay. Tadi ada yang belum absen ya, siapa ya?
Alexander.
Alexander sudah. Kalau